This is the home of the traditional media, the Australian and the Daily Telegraph. What effect will the Punch have on this? Well, I've asked David to tell us his thoughts.
One of the things coming from what's known as old media, former newspaper person, is that I think sometimes newspapers act a bit like the tablet that's brought down from the mountain on high. They can be very one-sided. You can write something for a newspaper and think, well, that's me done for the day, and here's my pearls of wisdom, and people can either agree or disagree. But when you blog, you can write something and you can put a lot of effort and thought and energy into it, and you can put it up, and within 2 seconds someone can get on there and say, that's the biggest pile of garbage I've ever read. And sometimes it can actually be a bit sort of depressing, but it is a bit of a mosh pit out there in cyberspace. And to get that sort of immediate, real-time discussion and often argument, because it takes the power out of the hands of the journos. And I think that's a good thing, because journos don't necessarily know any more or less than someone who works at a Coles supermarket or in a law firm. We do not have a monopoly on knowledge, and particularly for a site like ours, it is just our opinion. We want to start the conversation. We're not trying to end it by saying, this is the official version of what happened here. We've sort of been keeping out of the reader's way. I think that a big part of what we're trying to do at The Punch is to create, because on any given day, the reader's comments can actually be half, and sometimes if they're long comments, more than half of the content on the homepage has been written by the people who read the site. And it challenges the sort of orthodox view that I think old media held to its detriment, that the conversation should only sort of operate in one direction.
Is this the future? I mean, is the way that eventually the Daily Telegraph, the Australian, will have to go?
Look, I don't know. I think it's part of the future. But if you look at the shape that newspapers are in Australia, they are in much better nick than they are overseas. And I think that if newspapers continue to understand their audience and to represent the interests of their audience by going after stories and issues that affect the lives of their readers, then I think newspapers do have a really bright future. A lot of people self-publish because nobody in their right mind would publish them. There's a lot of mad stuff out there online. There's a lot of stuff where there's been no research, no one's spoken to anybody else. So I think that, trying to sort of create a more informed opinion base with better writing, and not just written by single issue people with a sort of tub to thumb. The key question about how we do our journalism, obviously there's no doubt that the delivery model is under pressure for print. It's a medieval delivery system, and the thing is that if you can get most of your news from the newspaper that you already love by clicking on the masthead site that relates to that paper, if you've got a decent broadband connection at home, why wouldn't you? So inevitably more and more of what we publish is going to be published, it was going to be read online than it is in print, and all the numbers are heading in that direction.
You think about the model you have is less reliant on journalists, outsourced sources, so there's a cheap option there. You're doing very well with the numbers, you're breaking stories. Is this sort of a recipe for big problems for the old traditional media?
I mean, I don't see it as being aimed at or even necessarily having the effect of damaging print, damaging independent blog sites. I see it as another new thing that hopefully people will read in addition to other stuff that they already read. Everything that we write for The Punch, every News Limited newspaper in Australia can grab it at any time and stick it in the paper. A lot of the journos that write for us, I mean, they're already employed. And I think that if you've got a day job as a journo, then, people like Lee Sales, Mark Colvin, Lisa Carter from Triple J, who made a debut on The Punch this morning. It's been interesting collaborating with people like that, because the idea of the ABC and News Limited getting together in any sort of sense to work on something collaboratively is on paper just ridiculous and should never happen. We are trying to just create outlets to give people an opportunity to do something different, to do something that they've always wanted to do, to pick an issue that they want to explore that wouldn't necessarily fit in the day-to-day of being late line host or PM host or industrial reporter for the Daily Telegraph or business reporter for the Adelaide Advertiser, or in the case of independent bloggers, wanting to use our site to hit some new readers and us put links back to their own blogs without getting too misty-eyed about it. We want to sort of bang the drum on behalf of journalism. Because journalism, I really do think, for all the wrist-slashing nonsense that you see, particularly on Twitter from all these social media experts about its irreversible decline, the great thing about digital is that there's never been more ways to tell a story. And what you guys are doing here now is a perfect demonstration of that. There's three of us sitting here chatting amongst ourselves. We don't need the sort of orchestral arrangements that newspapers require to put this to air on your website, and the explosion in the number of people who are out there writing, setting up their own stuff, almost garage band style, is a terrific thing.
Well, it's hard to believe that the Punch is not even 8 weeks old, so you've had a big impact. Hopefully we can come back in about a year's time and talk to you about the lessons learned. But thanks so much for joining us.
No worries, Jeremy. Thanks very much, mate.